Sometimes revenge doesn't need to be loud, just an email, a nod, and 800 pallets of glow-in-the-dark gravel to collapse an empire. It wasn't the moment I'd envisioned after 12 years of relentless work, but watching a nepotism prodigy destroy his own career with a single purchase order turned out to be the sweetest taste of silent justice. And this is how it all began. My name is Alice Morgan, and at 35, I'd carved my place as head of strategic operations at Vanderholt Logistics through sheer determination and an unhealthy relationship with Excel spreadsheets. The morning I closed the Meridian Industries deal, $20 million, 18 months of negotiations, and approximately 300 sleepless nights. I expected champagne, maybe a bonus. At the very least, a good job that didn't sound like it was squeezed through clenched teeth. What I got was a Slack notification from CEO Elaine Bradford. Team update at 3 p.m., bring cookies if you have them. No mention of the deal. No acknowledgement that I'd just secured the largest contract in company history. Elaine was famous for crying over birthday cakes and giving 40-minute speeches about corporate family values. But apparently, my achievement didn't warrant even a fire emoji. The celebration, if you could call it that, consisted of stale baguette slices from the downstairs deli and diet soda that tasted like disappointment. I stood there, watching my colleagues make small talk about weekend plans, when Elaine swept in wearing her signature coral blazer, the one she believed made her look approachable, but actually made her look like a walking sunset. "Everyone, I have wonderful news." She clasped her hands together like she was about to announce world peace. "My nephew Bradley is joining us as co-director of strategic operations." The room went silent. Co-director of my department. Bradley Monroe strutted in like he'd already been running the place for years. 26, fresh MBA, hair so perfectly styled it looked like he'd stepped out of a consulting firm's recruitment brochure. He made a beeline for me, hand extended, smile so bright it could power a small city. "You must be Alice. I've heard so much about you." His handshake was firm in that practiced way that screamed, "I read a book about power dynamics." "Guess you'll be my training buddy, huh?" Training buddy, after 12 years, after $20 million, after building the entire operations framework from scratch. I smiled. Not the warm kind, the kind that doesn't reach your eyes, the kind that makes smart people nervous. "Welcome to the team, Bradley." He didn't notice. They never do. That night, I created a new folder on my personal drive, Bradley Logs. Empty. For now. But I had a feeling, call it 12 years of corporate survival instinct, that it wouldn't stay that way for long. Some people respond to disrespect with confrontation. They storm into HR, demand recognition, make noise. But I've learned that the most effective warfare happens in silence. You don't need to push someone off a cliff when you can simply hand them a rope and watch them fashion their own noose. And Bradley? He looked like the type who'd braid that rope himself, add some decorative tassels, and call it innovation. Bradley's integration into Vanderholt Logistics was like watching a tornado made of cologne and confidence tear through a carefully organized library. He set up shop in the desk directly next to mine, not the empty one by the window, not the spacious corner spot near the printer, but right there, close enough that I could hear him mouth-breathing while he typed. "So, Alice," he said on his third day, spinning in his chair like a bored child. "You're what, 40? 45? Must be tough. Still grinding it out in the trenches at your age?" I was 35. He knew this. It was on the org chart he'd been given. 35, I corrected, not looking up from my monitor. "And these trenches built the foundation you're standing on." He laughed, that specific laugh young men do when they think they've said something clever. Right, foundation. But we're here to build skyscrapers now, not basements." The Bradley Logs folder gained its first entry that day. Day 3, suggested we sunset KPI tracking because metrics kill the vibe. When asked which vibe specifically, responded, "You know, the innovation vibe." His proposals were masterclasses in corporate word salad. He wanted to revolutionize our supply chain through intuitive thinking. He suggested we leverage our emotional intelligence to predict inventory needs. During a client call with a major automotive manufacturer, he interrupted their CFO to ask if they'd considered making the trucks more Instagram-friendly. The CFO's face went through several stages of confusion before settling on an expression I can only describe as violent bewilderment. "Let him cook," Elaine told me after I diplomatically suggested Bradley might benefit from shadowing operations before restructuring them. Sometimes genius looks like chaos at first. I documented everything, every meeting where he dozed off and woke up suggesting we pivot to blockchain. Every email where he CC'd the entire company on his thoughts about disrupting disruption. Every time he called our warehouse staff the ground troops and suggested they needed cooler uniforms to boost morale. But it wasn't just incompetence, it was aggressive incompetence with a smile. He'd schedule meetings over mine, then arrive 20 minutes late with a green juice and no apology. He'd take credit for systems I'd built, introducing them to new hires as something we've been working on. That "we" hung in the air like a bad smell. The tipping point came during Q3 planning. I'd spent 2 weeks preparing a comprehensive logistics overhaul that would save us $2.3 million annually. Bradley glanced at it for 30 seconds. "Feels safe," he announced to the room. "Where's the sizzle?" "The sizzle," I said slowly, "is in the savings. $2.3 million. But does it disrupt? It disrupts our excessive spending." He sighed like I was a grandmother struggling with a smartphone. "Alice, you're thinking like it's 2015. We need to be bold. Check this out." He pulled up a website that looked like it was designed by someone who'd just discovered neon colors. BrightPath Logistics. Their whole thing is intuitive shipping, no tracking numbers, no rigid schedules, just vibes. How do customers know when their shipments arrive? They feel it. I let that hang in the air for a moment. The room was silent except for the humming of the projector. "Interesting," I finally said. "Why don't you run a pilot program? Start small. Maybe construction materials?" His eyes lit up. "Yes, see, this is why experience matters. You know how to recognize vision." Elaine beamed. "I love seeing you two collaborate. Bradley, take point on this. Alice, give him whatever support he needs." I smiled. "Of course, Bradley clearly has excellent instincts. I'll make sure he has full autonomy on this." That night, the Bradley logs grew considerably. I also began researching construction material suppliers, particularly those specializing in decorative aggregates. You know, the kind of materials that really make a statement. Because here's what Bradley didn't understand. In logistics, every decision is a domino. You push one. And if you've set them up right, they all fall exactly where you want them to. And I'd been setting up dominoes for 12 years. He wanted to cook. I'd make sure he had all the ingredients he needed. Every single one. The beauty of watching someone self-destruct is that you don't need to push. You just need to stop pulling them back. Bradley's pilot program with BrightPath Logistics was like watching a toddler play with matches while sitting on a pile of kindling. My job was simply to make sure he had enough matches. "Alice, this is revolutionary," Bradley announced, barging into my office without knocking, a habit he'd developed that made my eye twitch. No tracking numbers, no delivery windows, just pure, organic shipping flow. "Fascinating," I said, turning my monitor so he couldn't see I was reviewing our insurance policies. "How does billing work without tracking?" "Trust system. Very Scandinavian." I nodded thoughtfully. "You should definitely implement this for our next materials order. Really show the board what innovation looks like." He practically glowed. Over the next 3 weeks, I watched him dismantle every safety net our department had spent a decade building. He gave BrightPath access to our vendor accounts. He disabled automatic inventory alerts because they were too negative. He told our warehouse manager that counting incoming shipments was micromanaging the universe. The warehouse manager, Roberto, had been with the company for 15 years. He looked at me during that meeting with the expression of a man watching his house burn down while someone told him fire was just spicy air. "Let him cook," I mouthed. Roberto's eye twitched. The first BrightPath shipment was supposed to be simple, 500 units of standard packaging materials. What arrived was 50 units of bubble wrap and what appeared to be someone's forgotten lunch. No delivery confirmation, no invoice, just vibes. Growing pains, Bradley assured Elaine during the emergency meeting. Innovation requires courage. Of course, I added supportively. Bradley's vision just needs scale to truly shine. Perhaps he should handle the Q4 materials order. Really demonstrate the potential. Elaine's eyes lit up. Yes, the Q4 order. That's perfect timing with the Thompson Industries showcase. The Q4 materials order was our biggest of the year, usually managed by 3 senior coordinators, cross-checked by me, and approved by legal. But Bradley wanted to fly solo, and I made sure his wings were nice and waxy. I'll prep the standard requisition forms, I offered. Actually, Bradley interjected. I've designed my own, more intuitive. His form was a single page with 3 fields. What you need. Why it's awesome. And vibe check, 1 to 10. I maintained eye contact while my soul left my body. Brilliant. Should I review it before? Alice. He put a hand on my shoulder. I considered breaking it. I know it's hard to let go. But sometimes the student becomes the teacher. You know. That night, I updated the Bradley logs and made a small addition to his requisition form. Just a tiny line item buried in the supplementary materials section. Nothing dramatic. Just premium industrial substrate, blue granite aggregate, bulk order. I'd researched this particular supplier extensively. They specialized in decorative gravel that glowed under UV light, marketed to nightclubs and theme parks, priced like it was made of actual sapphires, delivered in quantities that boggled the mind. The next morning, Bradley swaggered in with his completed form, sent it off to 5 suppliers, told them whoever had the best vibes gets the contract. Did you review the itemized lists? He waved dismissively. That's what killed innovation at Kodak. Analysis paralysis. I looked at the totals, felt the energy. Glowstone Industries just had this aura, you know. Glowstone Industries, my research had paid off. They did have an impressive website. I agreed. Very vibrant, right? And their tagline, make your world shine. That's exactly what we're doing here. I watched him forward the approval to Elaine with the subject line, Q4 order, let's glow. She responded with a string of fire emojis and, yes, innovation. The order was placed on a Tuesday. Bradley signed off without reading. Elaine approved without questioning. I filed everything meticulously, made backups of the backups, and waited. You seem happy lately, Roberto mentioned, passing my office. Just enjoying the innovative atmosphere, I replied, adding another document to the Bradley logs. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't a dish served cold. It's 800 pallets of glow-in-the-dark gravel, served at exactly the wrong temperature, at exactly the wrong time. And I had confirmation that it would arrive just in time for the Thompson Industries facility tour. Bradley wanted to revolutionize logistics. He was about to discover that some revolutions end with guillotines. The morning of the Thompson Industries tour started like any other, except for the 18-wheelers pulling into our loading dock at 6:47 a.m. I'd arrived early, coffee in hand, positioned at my office window with an unobstructed view of the warehouse receiving area. The first driver looked confused. The second looked concerned. By the third truck, Roberto was on his radio, speaking in rapid Spanish that I didn't need to translate to understand meant, what fresh hell is this? Blue gravel, mountains of it, pallet after pallet of premium decorative aggregate that sparkled in the early morning sun like a craft store had exploded. Each bag was emblazoned with Glowstone's logo, a cartoon star wearing sunglasses, and the promise, UV reactive, watch your world come alive. I pulled out my phone and sent Bradley a casual Slack message. Early delivery this morning. The volume is quite impressive, really makes a statement. The 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times before his response. Volume, What volume? I ordered standard materials. Looks like your innovative approach really scaled up. The blue is particularly striking. More dots. Then, blue. By 7:30, half our warehouse floor was covered in pallets. The morning shift stood in clusters, some taking photos, others just staring. One enterprising forklift operator had accidentally torn a bag, and glowing blue stones scattered across the concrete like someone had murdered a disco ball. Thompson Industries was scheduled to arrive at 10 a.m. They were considering us for a $50 million distribution contract. Their VP of Operations, Margaret Thompson, was notorious for her attention to detail and her hatred of what she called startup nonsense. At 8:15, Elaine's coral blazer of doom appeared in the warehouse. I watched from my window as she surveyed the blue apocalypse. Her mouth opening and closing like a fish discovering air was necessary for survival. At 8:17, my desk phone rang. Alice. Warehouse. Now. I took my time walking down, stopping to refresh my coffee. When I arrived, Elaine was standing amid the gravel galaxy. Bradley beside her, looking like someone had explained mortality to him for the first time. 800 pallets, Roberta was saying, holding the delivery manifest like evidence at a murder trial. 40 tons of decorative aggregate, UV reactive, wholesale cost, $450 per ton. I did the math out loud, helpfully. That's $18,000. For rocks. Rocks that glow, Bradley corrected weakly. Oh. Well then. Totally worth it. I pulled out my phone. Should I call Thompson Industries to reschedule? I mean, unless we're planning to tell them we're pivoting to nightclub construction. Elaine's face cycled through several shades of red before settling on a color I'd previously only seen on lobsters. Bradley. Explain. Now. The form said substrate. I thought. You thought? Elaine's voice could have etched glass. You thought? Alice reviews these orders. Bradley pointed at me like a drowning man reaching for driftwood. She should have caught this. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to our Slack conversation from 3 weeks prior. Actually, here's where you told me that letting you handle it solo was, quote, essential for innovative disruption. And here's where you said my reviewing your work was, quote, marshing your mellow. Harshing? Roberto corrected helpfully. It's harshing your mellow. Oh. I nodded. Thank you. Roberto. Bradley, you said harshing your mellow. A forklift beeped in the background, still moving pallets. One of the warehouse workers had discovered that the gravel did, indeed, glow under the black lights we used for security marking. A corner of the warehouse looked like a rave was about to break out. I have the approval chain, I continued, pulling up my meticulously maintained records. Bradley's requisition, Bradley's vendor selection, Elaine's approval with, oh, this is nice, a gif of a dancing flame. Elaine snatched the phone. There it was. Q4 order. Let's glow. Complete with her enthusiastic approval and 0 questions asked. At 9:45, a black town car pulled into our visitor parking. Margaret Thompson was 15 minutes early, because of course she was. Conference room, Elaine hissed. Bradley, you're sitting this out. Alice. I'll give the tour, I said smoothly. I'm sure Mrs. Thompson will be very interested in our innovative approach to inventory management. Bradley looked like he wanted to say something, but the weight of 40 tons of glowing rocks seemed to have crushed his vocabulary. As I walked toward the entrance, I passed Roberto. He gave me the slightest nod, the kind that said he knew exactly what had happened and would be buying me a beer later. Mrs. Thompson, I greeted our guest with my warmest smile. Welcome to Vanderholt Logistics. I think you'll find we have some truly illuminating developments to share with you today. Behind us, the warehouse glowed blue, like the world's most expensive mistake. The emergency meeting convened at 4 p.m. in Conference Room A, the one with the glass walls that Elaine usually loved because it promoted transparency. Today, Transparency was the last thing anyone wanted. Present, Elaine, still in her coral blazer, but now accessorized with stress hives. Marcus from legal, who kept adjusting his glasses like they might show him a different reality. Deborah from HR, typing notes with the grim efficiency of a court reporter, and me, sitting with my laptop closed and my hands folded. The picture of professional concern. Bradley was notably absent. Let's start with the facts, Marcus said, spreading out printed emails like tarot cards predicting doom. We have a signed purchase order for $18,000 of decorative gravel, approved by... He squinted at the signature. Bradley Monroe, co-director of strategic operations. Acting without oversight, Elaine interjected quickly. I opened my laptop with deliberate slowness. Actually, I have the oversight documentation right here. The room went silent except for the hum of the air conditioning and what sounded suspiciously like Elaine's teeth grinding. On September 3rd, I began, pulling up the first email. Bradley informed me that my involvement in his initiatives was, quote, stifling the creative process. CC'd to you, Elaine. Your response was, love the initiative. Alice, give him space to soar. Deborah typed faster. September 15th, I continued. I raised concerns about the vendor selection process. Bradley responded, all caps, this is why innovation dies. You replied with a gif of an eagle spreading its wings. That was clearly, Elaine started. September 22nd, I suggested implementing a review checkpoint. Bradley called an all-hands meeting about trust in the workplace, where he specifically named me as an example of old-school thinking holding us back. You applauded, literally. There's video. Marcus had stopped adjusting his glasses and was now just holding his head in his hands. September 30th, the requisition form. I questioned the substrate line item. Here's the Slack thread where Bradley says, if you understood innovation, you wouldn't need to question. Your response, he's got a point. Alice, sometimes you need to let go and trust the process. I clicked to the next slide. October 2nd, final approval. Bradley's email. Locking in Q4 materials. This is going to revolutionize how we think about logistics. Elaine's response, Yas King, with 3 fire emojis. It's Yas Queen, Elaine muttered, then seemed to realize that wasn't the point. I also have the BrightPath logistics correspondence, I added, pulling up another folder, including the email where Bradley told them to surprise us with their most innovative shipping solution. That's why we received no tracking information. We literally asked them not to tell us. Deborah had stopped typing and was just staring at her screen like it contained the secrets of the universe. There's more, I said, clicking through. The Glowstone Industries contract, where Bradley specifically selected the premium nightclub package. The warehouse capacity reports I sent warning that we had no space for large deliveries, which Bradley dismissed as spatial negativity. The vendor payment approval, where he marked the reason as because awesome. Enough, Marcus said quietly. Alice, did you know this would happen? I met his gaze directly. I provided 17 documented warnings about Bradley's approach to procurement. I suggested oversight at every step. I was told repeatedly that my experience was a barrier to innovation. I paused. So I did exactly what I was instructed to do. I stepped back and let Bradley soar. Like Icarus, Deborah muttered, then looked horrified at herself. The Thompson Industries contract? Elaine asked, her voice small. Margaret Thompson left 40 minutes into the tour. I replied. She said, and I quote, I've seen enough. This explains your recent creative pricing proposals. She was particularly impressed by the warehouse corner that looked like, her words, a unicorn's kidney stone collection. Marcus started gathering the papers. We'll need all of this documentation. Alice, everything. I produced a USB drive from my pocket. Everything from the last quarter, organized chronologically, with a full index. I also took the liberty of backing it up to the legal department's secure server. You know, for transparency. Elaine stood abruptly, her chair screeching against the floor. Where's Bradley now? I believe, I said, allowing myself the smallest smile. He's in the warehouse, trying to convince Roberto that we could market the gravel as a design thinking tool. Roberto's response included several words I won't repeat in mixed company. As they filed out, Deborah lingered. Alice, she said quietly, that folder. You've been building it for a while. I'm a big believer in documentation, I replied. You never know when transparency might become illuminating. She gave me a look that was equal parts respect and fear, then left me alone in the glass room, surrounded by the evidence of Bradley's spectacular failure and Elaine's complicity in it. Outside, the October sun was setting. In the warehouse, I knew 40 tons of premium gravel would soon begin its UV reactive light show. Let there be light, indeed. Bradley's Slack account went dark at 9:23 a.m. on a Tuesday. No farewell message, no dramatic exit, just the gray text that appeared next to his name. Deactivated. It was like watching a star blink out of existence, if stars were made of hair gel and unearned confidence. I discovered this while reviewing the morning logistics reports. A cup of coffee balanced on my desk, and the warehouse floor finally, blessedly, gravel-free. It had taken 2 weeks and a specialty removal company from Portland to clear what the crew had started calling Smurf Beach. Did you see? Roberto appeared in my doorway, trying and failing to suppress a grin. See what? I asked, not looking up from my screen. Nothing, just checking if you'd seen. Nothing. By lunch, the nothing had become everything. Bradley Monroe, co-director of Strategic Disappointments, had vanished from Vanderholt Logistics like he'd never existed. His desk, that invasive piece of furniture that had squatted next to mine, stood empty. Even his motivational poster, Disrupt or Die, had been removed, leaving a rectangular fade mark on the wall like a corporate ghost. The real earthquake hit at 2 p.m. All hands meeting, the email read, mandatory, Conference Room C. Conference Room C was the big one, usually reserved for quarterly reports and the Christmas party, where Elaine would inevitably cry during her toast. Today, she stood at the podium looking like she'd aged 5 years in 5 days. The coral blazer was gone, replaced by funeral-appropriate navy. Team, she began, then stopped, cleared her throat, started again. There have been some organizational changes. The room was silent. You could hear the HVAC system thinking about whether it wanted to work today. Effective immediately, I'll be transitioning to a new role as Special Projects Advisor. She paused, letting that sink in. Special Projects Advisor, corporate speak for, we can't fire you, but we can make you irrelevant. Additionally, she continued, her voice getting smaller, the co-director of strategic operations position has been eliminated. Someone in the back coughed. It sounded suspiciously like a covered laugh. Alice Morgan will continue in her role as head of strategic operations, reporting directly to the new CEO, who will be announced next week. I maintained my expression of professional neutrality while internally. A choir of angels sang the Hallelujah chorus in B-flat major. Are there any questions? Sarah from accounting raised her hand. What happened to the gravel? Elaine's eye twitched. Next question. Is it true it cost $18,000? Next question. I heard Thompson Industries called us aggressively incompetent. This meeting is concluded. As people filed out, whispers filled the air like carbonation in a shaken soda bottle. I heard fragments. Knew it would happen. That nephew of hers. Alice warned them. Glow in the dark? Seriously? Elaine caught my eye as she gathered her papers. For a moment, I thought she might say something. Apologize, maybe, or acknowledge that she should have listened. Instead, she just nodded, the kind of nod that said, You won, but I can't admit it. I nodded back. Good luck with your special projects, Elaine. Her mouth tightened. I'm sure they'll be very innovative. That afternoon, I received a flood of messages. Colleagues who'd watched Bradley bulldoze through our department suddenly remembered they'd always had concerns. People who'd laughed at his jokes about me being a dinosaur now wanted to grab coffee and discuss strategic alignment. I ignored them all. Instead, I sat at my desk, my beautifully Bradley free desk, and pulled up our Q1 projections. Real numbers, real logistics, real work that didn't involve the word vibe or require UV lighting to appreciate. Roberto knocked on my door frame. Beer o'clock? Give me 5 minutes, I said, saving my files. I need to close out some old folders. I navigated to my personal drive, to the folder marked Bradley Logs. 87 meticulously documented incidents, Slack messages, emails, meeting recordings, approval chains, a comprehensive anthology of aggressive incompetence. My finger hovered over the delete button. Then I created a new folder, Leadership Insurance, just in case the next nephew had ideas about innovation. Ready? Roberto asked. I closed my laptop. Absolutely. As we walked past the warehouse, afternoon sun slanted through the windows. In the corner where Smurf Beach had been, a faint blue sparkle remained in the concrete cracks, persistent, like glitter at a crime scene. You knew, Roberto said quietly. When you suggested construction materials, you knew exactly what would happen. I smiled. I believe in giving people the freedom to express their vision. 40 tons of glow rocks is quite a vision. Well, I said, pushing open the exit door. He did say he wanted to make things shine. The morning after Elaine's demotion announcement, I arrived at my office to find a small potted succulent on my desk. No card. But I recognized Roberto's handwriting on the care instructions. Thrives with minimal attention, like revenge. I smiled, positioning it next to my monitor where Bradley's motivational quotes used to assault my peripheral vision. Through my window, I watched the last truck haul away the final remnants of Glowstone Industries' premium nightmare. 40 tons of hubris, reduced to a line item on a very expensive lesson. My computer pinged, new email from HR. Subject, exit interview summary, B. Monroe. I almost deleted it unread, then curiosity won. Deborah had attached Bradley's final statement, submitted remotely because apparently he couldn't face returning to the building. I scanned his reasons for departure. Hostile work environment. Lack of innovation support. Sabotage by senior staff resistant to change. The last line made me pause. Alice Morgan deliberately set me up to fail. I leaned back in my chair. Considering this, had I set him up? No. I'd simply removed the safety net that I'd spent 12 years weaving for everyone else. I'd given him exactly what he'd demanded: complete autonomy, zero oversight, and the freedom to innovate without the burden of my dinosaur experience. The fact that he'd used that freedom to order 40 tons of glowing gravel, that was all him. My phone buzzed, text from an unknown number. This is Margaret Thompson, heard about the management changes at VH. Interested in discussing that contract again. Lunch Thursday. I typed back. I'll have our standard proposals ready. No surprises, no glow-in-the-dark materials, just solid logistics. Exactly what we're looking for. As I scheduled the lunch, another email arrived. The new CEO announcement. I didn't recognize the name. Someone from outside, brought in to restore confidence. Good. Clean slate. No nephews in sight. That evening, I stood in the empty warehouse, conducting my final review of the Q4 preparations. Everything was in order: proper materials, verified vendors, documentation that could withstand a federal audit. Boring? Maybe. Effective? Absolutely. Alice? A voice echoed across the concrete. I turned to find Elaine standing in the doorway, looking smaller without her coral armor. I owe you an apology, she said, words seemingly dragged from somewhere deep and painful. I waited. You tried to warn me. Multiple times. I chose not to listen because... She struggled. Because he was family. Because I wanted to believe that enthusiasm could replace experience. Enthusiasm has its place, I said carefully. It just can't replace basic competence. She laughed bitterly. $18,000 of glow-in-the-dark gravel. That's what my legacy here will be. 23 years, and I'll be remembered for fostering the great gravel disaster of 2024. I could have been cruel, could have twisted the knife, reminded her of every dismissive comment, every time she'd chosen Bradley's ego over my expertise. Instead, I said, you'll be remembered for building a solid logistics network that survived one bad quarter. The gravel will become a funny story. Eventually, she nodded, tears threatening. For what it's worth, you're a better person than I would have been. After she left, I did one final walkthrough, past the loading docks that had seen those 18-wheelers arrive like harbingers of doom, past the corner where Smurf Beach had briefly turned our warehouse into a discount nightclub, past the office where Bradley had plotted disruption and found destruction. Some people choose violence when wronged. They rage, they scheme, they destroy. But the most elegant revenge isn't about breaking someone, it's about stepping back and letting them break themselves. All I'd done was hand Bradley the rope and suggest he might enjoy making something innovative with it. He'd chosen to make a noose. I set the warehouse alarm, the beep echoing in the empty space. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new contracts, new people who thought they knew better. But tonight, I'd go home, pour a glass of wine, and toast the memory of 40 tons of premium substrate that proved one simple truth. Sometimes, the best way to fight disruption is to let it disrupt itself. As I pulled out of the parking lot, my headlights caught a sparkle in the asphalt, a lone piece of glow-in-the-dark gravel, embedded in the tar like a tiny monument to corporate stupidity. I smiled all the way home. Thank you so much for listening to this story of corporate revenge and glow-in-the-dark chaos. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below, and let's connect. If you enjoyed this tale of malicious compliance and strategic patience, please consider subscribing to the channel for more stories. And I'm curious, what would you have done in Alice's position? Share your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, remember, sometimes the best revenge is just good documentation.